Welcome to Living Life. Today we come to the account of Jacob and Esau's reconciliation. It is another high point in Genesis. It is tense and dramatic. It is also puzzling and enigmatic. It apparently brings the sad story of fraternal strife to a happy and joyful resolution. It brings the exiled Jacob back to his homeland, the promised land of Canaan. Jacob's new name, Israel, tells us of a new character at peace with God and humanity. But, as the closing scene suggests, his relations with Esau remain uneasy, and the friendly Canaanites will soon prove to be the cause of Jacob's greatest shame.
Genesis chapter 33, verses 12 to 20. Then Esau said, "Let us be on our way, I'll accompany you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are tender, and that I must care for the ewes and cows that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. So let my Lord go on ahead of his servant, while I move along slowly at the pace of the flocks and herds before me, and the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." Esau said, "Then let me leave some of my men with you." "But why do that?" Jacob asked. "Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord." So that day Esau started on his way back to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Succoth. After Jacob came from Padan Aram, he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan, and camped within sight of the city. For 100 pieces of silver he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. There he set up an altar and called it El Elohi Israel.
As we have seen in the previous verses, Jacob is a new man, Israel. His wrestling with God at Peniel has prepared him to meet Esau. Esau, too, has changed. When we last heard of him, he had been waiting for his father to die so that he could take his revenge on Jacob and kill him. But here, completely unexpectedly, he runs to meet Jacob, embraces him, falls on his neck, kisses him, and they weep. We see this in verse 4. He warmly invites Jacob to come and live with him in Seir in verses 12 and 14 and 15. Such warmth after so many years of hatred makes this scene one of the most beautiful in Scripture. The full and free forgiveness that Esau displays toward his deceitful brother is, as Jacob himself recognizes, a model of divine love. "For I have seen your face," verse 10 says, "which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me." Here we must reference what the rest of Scripture has to say about reconciling with others. This scene reminds us of the prodigal son, when the father, the one who was wronged and taken advantage of, was far off. He ran and kissed the prodigal son who was returning after spurning his father's good intentions and inheritance. Are you feuding with anyone? Are there deep divisions between you and another person? Perhaps based on things you have done or the things the other person has done. Here, Esau is the one who was wronged, and yet he is the gracious one in accepting his brother Jacob. Make peace with one another, I implore you. As much as it is possible, Romans 12:18 says, live at peace with all. The duty of making peace with your brother or your sister or one who has wronged you is stressed throughout Scripture. Esau is our model here. He goes out of his way to patch things up with Jacob, even though he has been swindled and schemed against. As difficult as it might be, let us swallow our tendency toward revenge and bitterness and forgive and move forward. Because living in the cycle of treachery, deceit, and bitterness will slowly eat away at your soul. Even after this warm embrace, there are issues in this narrative. What is happening with Jacob and his reluctance? He refuses to accompany Esau immediately to Seir, and he puts forth some flimsy excuses as to why he can't go with Esau. Are his motives entirely pure, or is he being conniving? Even Esau's offer of a bodyguard is politely turned down. Perhaps he is worried about being completely accepted after his own scheming, and he's hedging his bets against his loving brother. But in the end, as we see in verses 18 to 20, Jacob returns to Canaan, makes his home there, buys land, and worships El, the God of Israel. At last, he and the Jacob narrative have reached their destination. Israel has settled in Canaan, the land promised to his forefather Abraham, and God has fulfilled many promises. But the mention of Shechem in verse 18 presages a haunting story that we will examine in Genesis 34. Jacob comes safely or peacefully. The Hebrew word is salam in verse 18. This is an ironic twist. The city called Peaceful will be the scene of the bitterest strife in the patriarchal narrative. There at Shechem, Jacob erects an altar honoring the God of Israel who had called him and his family to a new land. Let me ask you, where do you perhaps need to build an altar to honor God's promises coming true, or a relationship that was frayed that now is whole? When I was younger, some people that were involved in a missions trip at my school were killed in a tragic accident. Later, hundreds and hundreds of us each gathered a stone and placed them together to build an altar that honored their service, an altar that is still there today. Might I suggest that you, even now, gather some stones to give you a physical, tangible reference point to God and God's goodness in your life. It might be that you have finally reconciled with a brother or a sister or a mother or father or friend, or that God has brought you through a traumatic and difficult experience. And you can remember that and literally make a remembrance in your backyard or in your home somewhere. And it can remind you of the faithfulness of God, the joy of reconciliation, and honor the God who has finally brought you home.